What is parental alienation?
It's a lot to wrap your mind around, realizing that you believed a lie your whole life. I think the thing that's the hardest is to realize, like, I'm a pretty smart person, and I didn't figure this out till I was 40 years old. And I'm watching the same thing happen with my stepkids. And I feel completely helpless to do anything about it. Like, for a while, I just felt frustrated with them because I'm like, look at all the things we're doing for you. Like, look at how we're showing you that we love you. And I didn't understand why they couldn't see it. And now I'm realizing why. Because I couldn't see it either.
It was always just control. Even when I was at his house and we wanted to do certain things, he would have to ask her, are you okay with this? As a father, he couldn't make decisions. She did everything in her power to swamp him. I felt he was forced to give up his rights. Alienation started with wanting to control him. Then it moved to controlling me. And then when I left, controlling my sister and my stepfather. Not just emotional abuse. It's not just mental abuse. It could be physical abuse. Like for me, being forced into a liposuction procedure because my mom didn't like the way I looked. Or being forced in third grade to be put on ADD medication to the point where I was hospitalized because it was such a high dose. Narcissistic mothers, they want to find a diagnosis they can point, like, hey, you're this way because of this kind of deal. Now, I've shared a video, and I'm like, this hit home, definitely with the ADD, and almost, it could be nowadays autism.
Yes.
So back in the early 2000s, ADD was rampant, and now it's autism. Everybody has some form of it. Yeah, it's not just emotional, it's not just mental, it's physical too. And it has lasted, I don't think it'll ever go away.
The honest truth is it started when I was about 9 months old because my parents separated when I was about 9 months old. I can honestly look now and say that's when it started. And it continued throughout my growing years up until about 13 is when I started figuring things out because at the time I'm 12, 13 years old. And I'm seeing my mom do to my sister exactly what she did to me. Within 3 years of kind of figuring things out, I left the house, and it was my mother that was alienating me from my father. I left the house, ended up moving in with my dad, stayed with him for 3-4 years, then went off to college and that kind of thing. How did it affect my life? It's still affecting me at 61 years old in many ways. Somebody asked me this not too long ago, what is the one thing that you think has affected you the most? And I'll say it flat out is I always looking for, in any type of relationship, the person to leave me, if that makes sense, right? Whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, coworker, whatever. They're always, in my mind, they're always looking to get away from me. That's crazy. Think about that, right? I'm always waiting for the shoe to drop.
I really struggle a lot with perfectionism for a long time. I mean, I guess I still struggle with this. I have a hard time even crying in front of my kids. And I grew up being mommy's little therapist. So I saw my mom cry all the time. I shouldn't have had to be my mom's therapist. My mom should have been there for me to help me get through my struggles. And so I never want to burden my kids with my emotions. So like that's something that I struggle with. And you know, in my therapy, my counselor was like, it's okay if your kids see you cry every once in a while. They need to see that you're resilient. But that is still so hard for me. I think that's the hardest thing is that you don't get to just hit a rewind button and, you know, get your graduation day back or your wedding day or when your kids were babies. I struggle a lot with that, you know, because my kids, my oldest will be 16 in January. And I'm like, all this time that he has missed with his grandkids. It's really hard because like, not only do I feel like the opportunity to have a functional like father-daughter relationship has closed, but it's also closed on like that relationship with my children because they're older. Like my youngest is 8. You know, so it's not like they're at that age where they're like, oh, sit on grandpa's lap and read a story. They're like all kind of beyond that now. So even though I'm working on rebuilding my relationship with my dad, it's like we've lost so much time.
Some dogs were put in cages where they had mild electrical shocks. And if these dogs moved to different parts of the cages where there were no shocks, they were resilient because they had control. They could get away from the shocks. But some dogs were placed in cages where they could not get away from the shocks. No matter where they went, they were getting shocks. And these dogs just laid down and whimpered. And I wish they would have extended the study to find out what would happen with the dogs that just laid down and gave up and whimpered if things would have changed and they would have maybe, suddenly had spots where they could get away. But that's kind of how I felt discovering that my father really did care about me. Because for decades, I was taught and believed, and I was in a trance because no matter what my father said, no matter what he did, even when he would call me, even when he would come to visit, I was always thinking that somehow he had a selfish motive. And so I was always thinking, well, how could this possibly be selfish? And I didn't realize that I was the one that really was kind of the front runner, especially in my adult years, in participating in my powerlessness to be loved when deep inside I wanted him to love me. And so when I discovered that he actually did love me, and the fact that he was calling and the fact that he would come by to visit sometimes was not because he was trying to prove himself to be a trophy dad and then walk away really not caring about me. When I realized that, these things are evidence that he really does care, then I became empowered because I realized that how I chose to see him and how I chose to relate to him, and especially as an adult, I had power to initiate communication and contact with him as well. And so I think that for me was what created resilience, was the empowerment of saying, my father does care, and I can do things that make it easier for he and I to communicate that caring with each other.
When it started to happen, I Googled, why can't I see my children and stuff like that. It was just so, I'm like, I've done nothing wrong, but all of a sudden, the term parental alienation popped up the first time for me, and I didn't even have to read about it. The name in itself, I was like, bing, light bulb moment. This is it. This is what is happening. It has a huge effect on your mental health and your physical health. You shouldn't have to hear negative things spoken about one parent at the other parent's house. You shouldn't. I didn't know what was happening because nobody shared this truth. And then until I found out, honestly, a lot of the issues went away.
Do you believe it's important for alienated kids to learn the truth, and why?
Absolutely. I mean, otherwise you're never going to live your life. You're going to live the life of a shell of a person. There is a person I've met once who was alienated and also had other challenges. I think about her a lot because it's just a heartbreaking story. It's one of those things where you realize, in another universe that could have been me, kind of thing. The hard reality is that you can't live your life if you're under someone else's thumb. You can't be the person you could be. You can't live up to your potential if you are trapped underneath the layers of trauma and abuse and learned behaviors and all of that stuff. Once you get out, once you reach a point where you realize the truth and you're able to say, I can stand on my own 2 feet without anybody else trying to push me down, that is a very empowering feeling. Then you can start building your tribe, your people who genuinely love you, genuinely want to be a part of your life and want to be connected to you. And then
I would want parents to know that when you're going through a divorce and you weaponize your children, and you weaponize the doctors, and you weaponize the counselors, and you weaponize the courts and the judges and the DCF workers and the teachers at your kid's school and the principal, and you weaponize the other siblings against that one sibling. You are creating a war zone in your house, and you have enlisted willing children to be the soldiers. And you wonder why we come out with complex PTSD, because in real life, people grow up and then they join the military and they are trained and they are equipped and then they are sent to war willingly, and they come back with PTSD. And we know this. We have studies on it. But what you are doing when you weaponize us as children, you are making us soldiers, not for a 4-year tour of war, but for the first 18 years of our entire life with no stop, no break.
My dad left for work one day, said goodbye to me, said goodbye to my mum, went off to work. And when he returned, me, my mum, and all of our furniture was gone from the house. We'd just disappeared. So he sat down and gave me the most eye-opening 3 hours of my life that I've ever had. We sat, we talked through, and you know, every 5 minutes was like a big rewriting of a certain event or a certain key thing or a certain, you know, and in a way that he was very honest. And he said, I promise you, I'm going to give you my version of the truth. And I am going to be as balanced as I can be here. And he was, and he said, look, yes, did I react badly at this time? Yes. And did I do this at this time? Yes. But here's why all of that happened. And, you know, gave me a lot of context on the relationship breakdown, you know, etc. So after that conversation, we then both went away and we wrote our memories of the time separately.
Wow.
About our experiences, and then he sent them to me and I married them up. And there are some that I remember more, some that he remembers more, and some we both have written about. You know, the interesting thing is that you get opened up to the version of a parent that you should have in the first place, because nobody is infallible. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. And the picture of my dad that he painted of himself, and that I believe to be true, is one of a good enough parent, because that's what we all really can realistically ever be, is a good enough parent. Did he lose his rag a few times? Sure. You know, could he have responded better to X, Y, and Z? Sure. But so could anyone. Was he fundamentally a loving father? Yes. Was it justified that he was his relationship with me was disrupted? No. And that's the key takeaway.